yesterday, the CNN panel on Abby Phillips' show or whatever was late last night.
I believe this was hers, but I think Audie Cornish of, she's on CNN sometimes, but also from NPR, I think guest hosted,
because this is her format where they do this roundtable discussion, and a frequent contributor is Scott Jennings, who is a conservative. He's one of the conservatives that they have there on staff at CNN.
A former confidant of Mitch McConnell.
Yes. And he is wearing an Israeli pin every single day just to notify people, hey, I am in favor of mass killing. Don't worry about violence. I love violence. I love killing is what that pin indicates, because it's not about the hostages. It's about trying to manufacture consent for a genocide by using the hostages as human shields for your own barbarity and signaling that to your bosses at CNN and all the people in media. So, Van Jones does it too. It's ridiculous, performative nonsense. When you talk about performance and identity and that kind of stuff, this is me, them basically saying like, hey, I'm somebody that's not going to rock the boat. But I only bring that up because the morality about killing is the subject of this conversation. Let's start here with the panel discussion about Daniel Penny's acquittal for killing Jordan Neely, the unhoused man on the subway. And this is what the conservative Scott Jennings had to say about him.
Prosecutors do go after people all the time for a variety of things.
You keep referring to Neely as the victim. I think Penny is the victim in this case, and I think the people on that. I think people on the train are the victims.
I have a tendency to call the people who die a victim. We have different ideas about that, but to my mind, someone lost a child, and I'm always going to feel for that person. That's just how I'm built. It's like a Christian thing. But the reason why I'm asking is...
Are you saying I'm not a Christian?
I'm not at all. I just want to make sure that you understand it's a values-based comment.
Are you saying I don't have any values?
Not a political one.
Are you saying I don't have any values?
No, Scott, she's not saying that.
He needs a clip for the internet, so I need to
exactly.
But in the meantime, prosecutors do go after people.
I mean, let's play the beginning again, because I just want when she basically says that part about the victim, that's what set him off here. Just really briefly at the beginning again.
Prosecutors do go after people all the time for a variety of things.
You keep referring to Neely as the victim. I think Penny is the victim in this case, and I think the people on that. I think people on the train are the victims.
I have a tendency to call the people who die a victim. We have different ideas about that.
Woo! All right. Pause it. So that was pretty brilliant by Cornish. What's her first name? Audie. Yeah. She did a great job there, and that was fun to watch, because that if you want to call yourself a Christian and then say that the person who was killed, there's no ambiguity here. He was clearly killed by Daniel Penny for being unhoused and in some way making people on the subway uncomfortable. In my view, that is not the kind of thing that should justify a murder, making people uncomfortable. In fact, we've been making that case ever since this particular instance of killing happened.
Some people seem to think it's celebrating violence or something. I think it's just people who are justifying Penny choking a guy over 5 minutes to death are the ones who are glorifying violence. And that's the thing, is like this whole thing of like who justifies violence and the juxtaposition with the United Healthcare CEO. The reason people are reacting in such a way to the United Healthcare CEO is that they actually care more about killing than you do. Tens of thousands of people every year are killed by the healthcare system that denies them care. That's also killings. And just because there are certain people who are too baby-brained, like that Nazi supporter of Israel, two victims, Daniel Penny and Israel, just because they can't see the other deaths that those people's existence embodies for most people that don't go to expensive cable studios every day to talk shit, keep spinning your wheels and keep not understanding this, because the cable news, guess what? I don't know what CNN's numbers are, but I know that Majority Report every day gets about 45,000 people just on YouTube, not to mention the other platforms we're on. That's about what MSNBC is doing now. This stuff is dead. And its audience dies every day.
And I mean, cable news has taken a massive hit since, which I think it was mostly populated by Never Trump people.
They were lying to people.
And then when you have guys like Morning Joe who go and kiss the ring with Donald Trump and show that this was all basically a show for them, yeah, you're going to lose viewership. You're not going to basically have the credibility with your audience. But I'm glad that you brought up who values life and who doesn't, because this was at another point on the panel with Audie Cornish. Scott Jennings brings up the killing of the United Healthcare CEO, by Luigi Mangione. And he draws this direct comparison. Let's see who actually cares about the sanctity of life in this situation.
Let me just help you understand. If you're on the American left tonight, here's my chart. The good guys today, Daniel Penny. The bad guys, Luigi Mangione. It seems to me.
How do you?
Everybody
what's
on the
the
left,
chart for victims?
I'm just telling you what I see out in the world.
I know.
What
I just want you to finish the chart.
Which
victim is
chart?
good and
make your own
victim is
chart.
bad.
What I'm telling you is
That's not on the second page?
I'm a fascist.
People on the left can't seem to tell the difference between the good guys and the bad guys.
People on the left. I'm asking you whether you consider this person.
We had people praising
I want to know whether you think that, as Congressman Crane does, that Daniel.
So the good guys and the bad guys. Now let me just, to Matt's point about killing, there is probably no one I can think of off the top of my head besides Sister Helen Prejean, the anti-death penalty activist and nun. Basically, it's religious leaders who are in principle against killing in every instance, straightforwardly. There's really no one in politics that I can think of who would say that they're principally against death, right?
Full-on pacifist, very rare.
Very rare. I don't think, especially, perhaps we could talk about, Rashida Tlaib but I mean, that's...
I'm not one. I'll just say I'm not one. I think that going after the Confederates in the Civil War should have been even more. Like, I'm generally anti-war because I think it doesn't always lead to good... Not always. But I think we should have occupied the South after the Civil War.
And we know how Nelson Mandela wrote about violence and the necessity of violent revolution at a certain point when their demands were not being met. So, like, even these heroes of civil rights and of our world, they understood what violence meant within the context of political struggle. So the point here is just that, like, as he stands there with his Israeli hostage pin and talks about who's the good guys and the bad guys, right? For folks like this, you can really decide what they decide is just is based on power. Jordan Neely was someone who had absolutely zero power. On the margins of society, abandoned by our society, struggling, unhoused, difficulties maintaining a day-to-day existence, who was killed by Daniel Penny on the subway because he was having an episode. The healthcare CEO had power, had money. Luigi Mangione, we now know from his manifesto, I don't even like using that term, but the letter that he wrote about the extreme pain that he was in, where he called healthcare CEOs parasites, and where he wrote about the back pain that he experienced on Reddit and was giving other people tips and that kind of thing. We know that this CEO had immense power over his life, or at the very least, perhaps we don't know the details of the case, maybe not Luigi Mangione's life, but millions of Americans who rely on for-profit healthcare to get their basic needs met. So for guys like Scott Jennings, justifying death is easy when the death is for people who don't have power. But when one guy who has a lot of money and power is killed, that means that anybody that looks at that and shrugs, or in his words, celebrates it, they're the bad guys. Because bad guys for freaks like this, again, people who are already in power, is about people who try to upset the apple cart for a system that works perfectly for a guy like Scott Jennings.
That kills people every day. That killed people every day before that fucker was shot. Sorry, pardon my language, but this is so infuriating.
Yeah.
These companies kill people every day. every day. So who's the people who don't care about killing?
He's wearing an Israeli hostage pin. He's wearing an Israeli propaganda pin. Of
course.
Which is not about the hostages, because it sets up a false premise that this continued genocide is for the benefit of the hostages, when we know that the hostages, the bulk of them were released during the ceasefire.
Yeah. Like, the policy, Oscar Wilde, 120 years ago, said, I'm a socialist, almost close to an anarchist. The dynamite policy is a bit absurd again, because again, this sort of individual acts of violent resistance, I don't think necessarily lead to good things ultimately. So again, that's why we're not actually celebrating the gunning down of this guy. What we are saying is the response to most people when they are confronted with the existence of a guy like that is similar to how it would be if someone said a torturer from Russia was killed in Ukraine. Like, people, maybe that guy had a family. Maybe that, who knows? That doesn't matter, because his position in this world was horrible. And it, again, you can't just say, I'm going to think about this as individual people now. No, this is about mass neglect, mass cruelty for a motive that is traded on the stock market. These companies are publicly traded. So people with more money can skim off, oh, there's a little profit I can get for sitting on my ass. And then these companies buy politicians. We need to be able to widen out occasionally. We need to be able to understand that history doesn't start on October 7th, when the people in power tell us that actually that's when we started about it, because the year before was massively deadly for Palestinians. We need to not say, oh, look at this murder in isolation. Doesn't all these people love murder? The people who love murder are the people who think that private companies should profit off of denying people health care. And all that stuff's done in the dark, and none of our media gives a shit to actually go in on it and actually elaborate what's going on in people's lives. And this is Democrats are the ones Matt Iglesias or all these people. You lost 2 elections. Yeah. You lost to Trump twice.
Yep. And you know what? This is the rage that could have been spoken to. Instead, the rage was completely misdirected towards people on the margins of society.
Is this Bernie bro type shit? Everyone's a Bernie bro for the assassin bro now. It's just the assassin bro narrative.
Yeah, right. Good luck with that. Good luck with that, because this is cross-partisan, as we saw in the Ben Shapiro comment section. We saw in the reaction from his audience, and perhaps that won't last. But in terms of just a initial reflex of I kind of get it. Yeah, that's bipartisan.
And it's not through the media, it's not through culture, it's not through propaganda. It is, unless the propaganda is the messages that people receive when they open up their bills for healthcare or they look at their premiums. That's quite a fucking message.
Morally Gray Jedi said Jennings on television defended a white man killing a black man in front of a black woman. It really just exemplifies how black lives are dehumanized without a second thought. Exactly. Chardonnay Socialist. This was a few $1,000s that I put on a credit card. The same situation was with a major injury and or any kind of hospital stay would have likely been costly enough to put my business and livelihood in jeopardy. Redford says,
hey, look at their profits from 2013 to last year. Pretty much every one of these companies tripled to quadrupled even more their profit, thanks to our wonderful private health insurance system, Obamacare.
Not Your State Rep said, dang, Matt on a roll. Number 13 says, I don't think you're correct about what the assassin could lead to, Matt. Shock doctrine doesn't only have to work for right-wingers.
I think this conversation needs to be had in a way that tries to lead to good outcomes. And, maybe the Shinzo Abe effect of the assassin's bullet becoming a highlighting of some sort of thing that most people recoil at when they look a little bit closer to. I think that's possible. I also think there's a great chance that this leads to giant cop budgets, giant security forces, way more surveillance that trips people up. And because I, frankly, don't have confidence that the Democrats are going to be able to channel this to anything positive.
I agree, but overall, I'm sorry. This was a moment of class consciousness and understanding that I don't know if we've seen since Bernie Sanders' campaign, and that's just the reality of it. It's not to say that murder is justified in any way,
right,
but it is to say that the reaction to it should be constructive.
I don't condemn John Brown. I don't condemn John Brown. I don't also point to him as a model for politics.
Right. To more from the five, just read on CBC News that The Onion has been blocked from acquiring the InfoWars studio. Yes, I meant to headline that. It's a bummer. I hope that they get that fixed, because the money from that sale was supposed to go to the Sandy Hook families, I believe. And it's just funny. Noah from Tampa, the conservative mind equates those with power in the social hierarchy have the power because they naturally deserve it, and therefore any actions they take against those lower in the hierarchy as inherently natural and therefore morally justified. It's law of the jungle.
Settler colonial. Minnesota genocide of Native Americans. There's all these stories about, look at they during the Civil War, they came after us when all our soldiers were fighting the Confederates, and they did all these atrocities and nailed a baby to the tree was one of the famous ones. No discussion of the fact that it was policy to literally starve the tribes on the Northern Plains, with one of the traders responsible for giving them their negotiated through treaties aid, saying let them eat grass. That stuff, that's prehistory.
Yeah. Johnny Blaze, I love being price gouged because it helps me stay humble and grateful for what little I can afford. At least I'm not a starving African child. I'm a starving, brainwashed, homeless American. I can sleep easy. Oh, yeah, I hear you, man. Toronto David, but Sam sold me a scarf and a mug, so I guess that's as bad as taking millions in donations from the audience. Dave from Jamaica, Emma, you stating facts is grossly identitarian. It seems like people have been on Twitter. Juice from Jesus says, I think there's a reason to feel optimistic with the upcoming right-wing populist labor regime. Through shrewd betting through Poly Market, all workers will have the chance to build wealth. Gerard Depardieu, all you max left griffers at MR just need to wait to see the populist right response to this. Then we will know whether or not they were ideologically serious. Yeah, any day now.
The thing is you can just take money and shut up about it. But sometimes if you want to make it a big marketing stunt because contracts are expiring and you're doing a pivot, you put some oxygen into the flames.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.